What's up guys, and welcome back to another eBay miniature rescue. Today, we're going to be tackling the best models in AOS, Squigs. So the whole point of this Squig challenge, if you will, is to show that you don't need a whole bunch of different products to get a good result. Now, I was contacted by Luke from the channel Tiny Strokes, and he had this cool idea to kind of show people that you don't need a whole bunch of products to have a good result, right? So we're taking 3 different colors. We get to kind of choose. Technically, black was not a part of that choice because you're probably going to have a black primer or something like that. In my case, I decided to paint a bunch of Squigs, and I used white primer for some and black for some others. So kind of depending on what you have, what different paints you have, you can go in a lot of different directions. The other rule was that you were only allowed to use kind of a minimal amount of actual tools. So in my case, I only used one brush, and it was this Artist's Loft number 2. I got this at Hobby Lobby for $2.50. It was on sale. Normally, I think it's $5, so not bad. And honestly, for a pretty cheap brush, this has actually been an awesome workhorse for me. So if you're ever at Hobby Lobby and you do find these brushes, they're definitely worth checking out. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to show the colors up front. We're going to get straight to painting. So let's go check it out. Alright, so let's get right into this with red, blue, and yellow. Now, these are the 3 primary colors on a basic color wheel, which means you can make secondary colors with them. So essentially you have access to 6 colors using 3 paints. Now, this is not any kind of color theory. I'm not trying to teach any of that. But if you start off with 3 paints, these are a good way to go if you want more colors. In this case, I'm mixing an orange and a purple, and I'm not doing any green just because I didn't really want green in this particular Squig. That's going to come a little bit later. So the first Squig we're going to work on has been primed with regular white primer. Now, I went to Walmart, spent $1.50 on this primer, and you know, it's not horrible. It's a basic primer. So the first thing that we are going to do is lay down a very thin coat of this red. My main goal here is to kind of fill in some details to start to see where we want to start placing some of our shadows and highlights. And because we're working with a white base coat, we essentially get another color for free in that this thinned down red makes a pink. So for the most part, I'm going to fill in the gums, and that's going to be our pink on this model. The next color we're going to reach for is a nice mix between that red and blue. And this is going to give us a pretty nice purple, and I'm going to start to kind of sketch this in for now, still pretty thin, and keep this in the shadows and kind of the deeper recesses. Now I'm going to reach for this more bluish purple. There's a lot more blue added into that red, so it's a little bit darker and just has a little bit more of a blue hue to it. Now I'm going to intensify the shadows a little bit more. You know, adding more layers means we're going to get more opaque, and it's going to be, you know, more intense. And then I'm going to wash the rest of the model so that we can kind of pick out all of those details and then start to tie these colors together. So a lot of new painters go into a hobby shop and they see different products labeled washes or shades. And while those are really good products and they do work as advertised for the most part, realistically you can take pretty much any paint you want and make it a wash. Once you water it down, it kind of spreads similarly. Now those washes are specially formulated with different mediums to make it a little easier on you, but they're essentially the same thing. Or maybe more appropriately, you can use them to achieve the same result. So now I'm coming in with the pure version of that red. It's a little bit watered down into kind of a layer. You know, it's not quite a base coat, but it's not as thin as what we were working with before. And I'm starting to highlight the top of this model. I really want that red to stand out on top and kind of shift down into that purple blue on the bottom. Then I'm going to come back to the palette and grab some more of that kind of deep purple. I'm going to add just a little bit of red into it, but I'm going to water it down quite a bit. And this is going to give us kind of a purpley red tint that we can put over the teeth. And the idea with this is that we're going to try and push this toward the top of the gums, try not to cover up our nice pink. And it's going to make the teeth have kind of a gradient from, you know, the sharp point down to the gums. And that way we don't actually have to use another color to have a nice looking mouth. Now to continue to brighten up that red on top, I'm going to keep going back with fairly thin layers and just kind of pushing that over the top. Now, the more we do this, the more opaque that paint is going to get, and it's going to intensify that red. So I'm going to do this until I feel happy, and then we're going to go back to the palette and start to introduce some of the orange that we made using that yellow, and brighten that up in kind of smaller and smaller areas to just create more highlights. And once again, when I'm happy with the opacity that that orange has gotten to, then I'm going to stop and we're going to move on to some just pure yellow. Now we're going to make those highlights even smaller, and that way we're just building up this color slowly and getting those highlights to fine points. So in order to achieve smoother blends when working with pretty thin paint like this, you're going to want to go back to some of your previous colors. Now that's one of the benefits of having a wet palette, is that those colors are staying. I didn't have to change that palette or pour and mix new paint this entire time. That paint stayed and I was able to just go back to it whenever I needed. So, you know, consider checking out wet palettes. Essentially though, I'm taking that previous color and I'm kind of layering it very lightly over that transition point between that darker color and my brighter yellow. And that's just going to give us a nice even transition from the yellow to the red, orange to the red to the, you know, deeper purples. And that's pretty much going to do it for our red, blue, and yellow squig. The next one we're going to do, we're just going to use straight up contrast paints. More specifically, we're going to use a yellow, turquoise, and pink. The first color that we're going to come in with is a very watered down pink. Now normally you're not supposed to water down contrast paints, but in most cases you can use it as a glaze or a light wash if you do. So we're going to fill in all the recesses with this pink, let that dry, and come back in with some yellow. Now the yellow is going to pretty much go on normally all across the entire body. And what that's really going to do is pick up a lot of that pink that's in the recesses and kind of intensify it with that orange color. In general, you want to lay down a fairly thick layer of contrast paint so that it, you know, soaks into those recesses and kind of picks up all of the detail. But you want to make sure that you're not letting anything pool too harshly, and you want to push that color around so that you get that secondary color in the areas that you want. Then I'm going to come in with that pink and I'm going to go over the lips and the teeth, any of the mouth area, and the whole underside of the body. Now the undersides of these squigs are fairly separated. There's kind of like a round belly that leads all the way to the back of the tail. So you can kind of use your brush to just brush up just against that edge and really fill in that area. Now this pink isn't very strong, so I had to do a few different coats, but I do like the way it turned out. Then I'm coming in with turquoise, and because this isn't really a color that goes with our other colors, I thought, let's make some interesting animalistic patterns on the back of this squig and really make it stand out. So I ended up really liking the way that this squig turned out, and I ended up doing a second one using a little bit stronger and thicker layers of this contrast paint. So you'll have to decide which one you like better, but I think they turned out pretty cool for just using 3 different colors, and I would totally play an army of Squigs that look like this. Jumping off of those weird contrast colors, I'm going to come in with some orange, green, and purple. Now we're going to lay down a nice base coat of orange on the top of the skin, kind of leaving that underbelly like we did with that contrast. And already, I'm totally digging this bright orange. We're going to head to the palette, mix up some green and blue, and it's going to give us a nice turquoise. And I'm going to water that down and give a wash to all this orange. Now orange and blue generally look pretty good together, so having this blue in the recesses gives a nice contrast and really picks out that detail. I'm also going to use this color on the underside of the body, and it's just going to be a regular, base coating layer type of paint. But I'm going to take that up on the sides of this tail and make some pretty cool little markings. We're going to take some of our regular orange and I'm just going to clean up the skin. So anywhere that the wash is settled, we're just going to avoid and just clean up the orange that's on top. This particular Squig has his tongue hanging out with a nice bit of disgusting slobber. So I decided to paint the tongue and the slobber a nice bright green. After filling in the eyes with this green as well, I'm going to call this one complete. So we're just going to take a quick break and I'm going to list off all the channels that are involved in this sweet, sweet collab. Luke at Tiny Strokes, Devs and Dice, Dice Chatter, Goobertown Hobbies, Miniature Marauder, Miniocalypse, says a sweet name, Schnitzy Basing, Sin Nerds, Table Ready Gaming, Nate's Miniatures, and of course, myself. Back to painting. Alright, so for this last one, we're going to use Inky by Darkness, a red, and a bone color. Now the Inky by Darkness is basically just a dark teal, so if you have that, I just happen to like this color a lot, so I'm going to shout that out. Pretty much though, we're just going to base coat the entire miniature in this color, and we're going to leave the teeth so that we don't tint that with any of this turquoise. Then I'm going to add that red to the turquoise, and we're going to do the teeth. That way we get a gnarly, red, gummy teeth look. Using that same dark red mix, I'm going to paint a line from his nose all the way to the end of his tail. Followed up by a quick wash using the same color. I'm just going to dip this into some water, thin it out, and then wash the entire model. This is going to give us some nice reds in those recesses and really tie that kind of stripe down the skin into the rest of the model. Right after that, we're going to thin down some of our straight red and start to brighten up that stripe and just lightly go over this and kind of glaze it onto any of the raised areas all the way down his back. Since we have a bone colored white as our third color, I'm going to add this to the red. We're going to get a nice kind of muted pink. And what we're going to do is highlight that red and just give little accents to some of the raised areas. So I'm going for these spikes on his back and kind of the nose and lip area, anywhere that's a little bit more skin toned that we want to be just a little brighter. So I just wanted to take a second and kind of talk about this 3-color challenge a little bit. Now, when you're starting off painting, it can seem a little daunting. You see all these painters on YouTube and, friends and other people at the hobby shop. They're painting with tons of colors and techniques. And the whole idea behind this is that you can get a crazy amount of variety with just a few colors. It's all about playing around with the paint and just seeing what you can come up with. And I really like that aspect because I wouldn't have gone for any of these colors on my Squigs normally. And now I have this eclectic circus of Squigs that just look ridiculous. in the best way on the table. And I couldn't be happier. So take a handful of paints and just experiment and see what you can do, and just try and have fun with it. The last thing we're going to do to this squig is take some of that off-white, mix it into our Incubi Darkness, and just get a little bit lighter kind of turquoise tone. And I'm going to go over the skin on the legs and near the mouth and just kind of give some general highlights. And this really is just going to kind of boost up some of that turquoise and make it a little bit more interesting. That's pretty much going to do it for this particular squig. I don't know, I kind of like this one the best. I like the contrast that it gives off. The teeth especially I think turned out pretty good. But let me know down in the comments which one was your favorite. So I'm going to do some quick round shots of each one, go through that, and then there's going to be a quick message at the end followed by a little bit of a sneak peek for next week. So for all of those people who like to stick around to the end, I thank you, and I hope you look forward to the next one as much as I do. Thank you once again for joining me on another eBay Miniature Rescues. If you like something about this video, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing, as it really helps out the channel. And don't forget, check out all the other channels that were part of this fairly massive collaboration. I've seen lots of works in progress from all of these guys, and honestly, the results are pretty incredible. From just 3 paints from each person, it's pretty cool to see. So check that out. And once again, I'm Casey, and I will see you in the next video. So hey, let's just get up real close now. All right, check this out. Oh, that's bright. All right, so I know you can kind of see this. I painted this extra squig. I did this with 3 colors, same as the other one, same brush and everything, but I'm gonna do something a little different. I'm going to post a video in the next, say, week or so, and it's going to be strictly ASMR. Now, I know a lot of people have asked for that, and as much as I think that's a weird thing to ask for, I figured I'd give it a shot. So, subscribe, hit that bell, check it out in the next few weeks. Thanks.